Hi, I'm John Feldt. This is the weekly water outlook from Blue Water Outlook, recorded on February 3rd, 2013. Well, as I normally start off the briefing, I want to show the precipitation over the last week and across the southeast U.S. It was definitely a very active week. One of the things sort of interesting here, if you look at the tracks here, you'll see the streakiness sort of from the southwest to the northeast, and that aligns very closely with the cell motion of the thunderstorms that we had this week. When you see that streakiness, that's more typical of a spring or summer type pattern than a winter type pattern, which is more synoptic or widespread. So I would say just by looking at this past precipitation for the last 7 days, you can definitely, if you didn't know better, you would say this is a spring pattern. And as many of us know, we did have quite a bit of severe weather. I have the reports from the first day of the severe weather event right here, and the second day. Blue are wind damage reports, and red are tornado reports. So it was a very active and unusually active for this time of year event, and it did produce not only severe weather but heavy rain as well. The area in yellow are rainfall estimates of 3 inches to 4 inches, and in the higher elevations where rain was enhanced of the southern Appalachians, you can see a little dark brown there. That's 4 to 5 inches. Again, this is a trend we've seen over and over now for several months, and some of it's climatologically based, but you can really see that difference here between where we have your heavier rain right here and dropping off very quickly as we get into that area of drought. We've seen that for quite some time. So the percent of normal rainfall, we have those areas that have received 2 to 3 times normal rainfall for the week in the blue and purple. And then if we get into parts of the eastern Carolinas, the southeast part of Georgia, we see that it was below normal precipitation. And across Florida, only 25% or less of normal precipitation during even a dry time of the season. So you can see that we're seeing that pattern once again. Now, if you look at Mississippi, you can note that there was an area of lesser amounts of rain over in Mississippi, and that in the past we really haven't seen. Now, it's sort of interesting here. I talked about those tracks. You can see those streaks even clearer here. And again, the line was moving generally from the west to the east. The cell movement was very rapidly, 60 miles an hour from the southwest to the northeast. Now, there is a little bit of snow over the southeast U.S. You can see Tennessee did receive some light amounts of snow in the colder air, in Kentucky. If you look along the spine of the Appalachian Mountains, you can see the heavier snow. Again, that's obviously based on climatology. Higher elevations are getting more snow due to the orographic lift and the colder temperatures. So we are getting some snow built up in the mountainous regions. Now, if we look at the bigger picture, this is where the current snowpack is around the nation. An estimate from satellite, and the bottom graph shows the progression of snow cover. We started off the year on January 1st right here with about 60%, over 60% of the nation covered with snow, came back, and now I think what we're seeing here is a very slow increase, slow and steady. I believe it's still below normal. It's about 45.5% coverage, but it is beginning to be a little bit more extensive over the last couple weeks. Still looks fairly modest. Now, one of the factors we'll look at very closely here, mainly in the upper Midwest, is the amount of water equivalent. This gives you some estimate. We need to get more of that purple there, the dark, very dark color. And it looks like North Dakota, Minnesota certainly is beginning to get that, as well as Wisconsin. Okay, now, I really rely on Arctic oscillations and teleconnections this time of year to give me some clue on the medium range type patterns. I wanted to sort of step back and look at what we've had so far this winter. We've basically had 4 periods. We're in the 4th right now. The first was a negative oscillation, Arctic oscillation. Now remember, if it's below this line here, it's negative. If it's above that line, it's positive. About 90% of the winter so far has been negative. We've had that phase 2 was a slight positive. But look at where we're at right now. I have it number 4. We're actually the strongest positive Arctic oscillation that we've seen all winter. So with that, you might suspect that we might get some changes in our precipitation pattern here going into that. Now, it'll be interesting to see if it stays positive or if it dips back south into a negative territory. If you look at the the projections here, and that's the red is the forecast, has it dipping very much towards negative over the next couple weeks. And I'll show you just a middle bit here. In the models, you can see that it does get, after this weekend, out farther as we get into the middle part of the month, it does show that it might get more of a negative pattern. Now, I also occasionally look at the Madden-Julian oscillation, or MJO, and this one doesn't always impact the southeast U.S., but it occasionally does. And actually, when it does, the southeast can be pretty significantly impacted with it. And you might remember, if you frequently listen to my briefings or read the material I put out, I think we've seen evidence of maybe twice this winter where the MJO had some role in the precipitation trends across the southeast U.S. Definitely that one earlier this winter, maybe this one this week. This complicated graph here shows that there are 8 different regions where this MJO, or enhanced convection, might be occurring. It's a traveling oscillation, so it moves across the globe and the tropical areas, and it basically, when it gets into one of the zones 6 or 7 in the Pacific, that's when we could tap some of the enhanced moisture and increase the precipitation over the southeast U.S. Now, in this graph here, if it's within this circle, it's weak, and the further away it gets, the stronger. So you can see it's been fairly strong in that region, and now it's actually moving out of that region. So last week when we had the severe weather, this is a mid and upper level water vapor image, and look at where it's coming from. Look at where it's coming from, this way out into the Pacific. It picked up that mid-level moisture, water vapor, and transported it into the middle part of the nation. I always say, when you get that tap of tropical moisture, you can get very much enhanced precipitation. Now, the only reason we didn't have more widespread rain last week was because it was so progressive. It was moving through within an 8-hour period. But if this would have been semi-stationary, this could have been an event where we would have got a lot more rainfall. So let's take a sort of a seasonal update. I put a long-range precipitation on here and sort of showed the past 30 days. I just wanted to show you the precipitation trends. And we've really seen this trend of Louisiana, Mississippi, northwest Alabama, far northern Georgia, Tennessee, and then a secondary spine up into the Ohio Valley. This has been the precipitation pattern that we've seen so far this winter. Much less rainfall to the southeast U.S., and that's why the drought has persistent, the core of drought in the middle part of Georgia. Now, the squares here are areas of either high flows or minor flooding. Right now, I would characterize the flooding as scattered and relatively minor, but keep in mind, this is the time of year we're setting the stage for March into April, where the big show is over the southeast U.S. And we're going to have to watch this very closely to see if this continues, because this could give us some sign of possible vulnerabilities. In fact, this is a calculated model showing the percent of the upper soils that are saturated. And it shows pretty clearly here the areas of blue are the more saturated areas. The areas of yellows and reds are less saturated. So it gives you some clue to the perhaps a vulnerability, and I'm going to draw this in very roughly here. But what we see here is perhaps this area right here is more vulnerable to flooding should heavy rain develop. So keep that in mind. This will change a bit, but if we get several repeated rains over that area. On the other hand, this area here, this area in here is much drier, and that needs the rain. That could use a lot more rain to saturate the soils. Now I want to talk a bit about the big picture here and give an overview of the jet stream. Well, here is the jet stream as of Sunday. Now what I'm showing you here is the jet stream as well as areas of mid and upper level moisture. So this is going to give some idea of the energy in the atmosphere and also the potential for precipitation. So as we start out the week, you can see that we have a digging area of low pressure, or trough of low pressure in the east. And then as we get through the middle of the week, this is getting towards the middle of the week. What I want to point out here is this area of green is indicative of that mid and upper level moisture that's streaming across the central and the eastern part of this nation. That's going to be the primary precipitation feature this week. I also want to point out here that if you look at the jet stream here, you see that by the middle of the week, it sort of straightens out. It's much more of a west to east flow than at the beginning of the week, and that's showing that that positive Arctic oscillation is really settling in through this week. The southern jet stream is a little bit more active, and we have the flow, like I said, from west to east. Now, if we go through the week, the area of green here, you can see that that very quickly moves through, and that's our chance of rain over the middle part of the nation and the southeast U.S. Some more lighter or moderate snow over the northern tier, and that's that pattern we've seen for quite some time now. So if I go out a little bit further towards the 5th of February, and then as I near next the late this week, what we see here is again a very strong west to east flow, a very strong progressive flow. This is going to keep moisture moving very quickly, lighter amounts of precipitation, and after that midweek system, it looks fairly quiet for the rest of the week until we get close to next weekend. Now, next weekend, I want to point out we have a stronger part of the southern jet developing. Here it is right here over the western U.S., and you can see it moves across the area over the weekend, and it brings, this is that chance of heavier rain from the Gulf Coast states up through parts of the southeast U.S., the Tennessee and Ohio River valleys. That's going to be a stronger system, and that'll be next weekend. Now, if I go out just a little bit further here towards the end of the mile run, you begin to see the jet stream beginning to bow from the north to the south, and that's the possible indication of another change from a positive Arctic oscillation back to a negative Arctic oscillation. Okay, now I showed that it looks like we will have sort of a midweek, relatively modest system. I'm not overly impressed with it. And then as we get towards next weekend, perhaps a stronger system pushing through. This is a 7-day precipitation estimates. And you can see for the most part, this would not be an excessive rain event for most of the area. It would just tend to increase the upper soil moisture. If this does develop, there could be a more focused band of heavier rain, 2 to 3 inches along the immediate Gulf Coast. That area could probably handle that without a whole lot of problems. So this week, at least right now, and I will be updating this later this week if needed, it looks like more of a manageable rain event, and then we'll have to keep an eye on that second one next week. Sort of interesting looking a little bit further out into February, 8 to 14 day forecast. It is showing the possibility of continuing a more active pattern over the southeast U.S. I looked into that range very closely. Doesn't look extremely active, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a dry period as well. It looks like more of a manageable precipitation. So the takeaway points from this week's briefing: a midweek modest rain event, a better chance perhaps next weekend, continue moderately active week 2. Thank you for listening to this week's Weekly Water Outlook. We'll be updating this again next Sunday.